turn to a former Met police officer and head of crime and justice at Policy Exchange, the think tank, David Spencer. David, welcome to you, and thanks for producing some really valuable and important, I think, timely work as well. If you could summarise your key findings, what are they?
Sure, thanks very much. Well, as you say, this report's been published by Policy Exchange today. I think the really important thing to say right off the bat here is that what we're not talking about is taking anything away from the individual police officers who work with real commitment and courage for the public. I think that's really, really important. What we're talking about in the report is the system that they need to operate and work in. And what we're saying in the report is that there are too many ways now where it appears that British policing has lost its way.
To what extent, David, does that reflect broader cultural trends? If you live, the police are merely a reflection of the society from which they are drawn. Explore that for us. That they're not out on some tangent. They are simply representing the values of the day.
I think that's very true, and it's an absolute bedrock of British policing, and has been for 200 years, that the public are the police and the police are the public. So I think you're absolutely right that what we see so often in policing is a reflection of the society that police officers work within. What we're saying is that as society gets more complicated and more complex, particularly around the threat from technology, is actually that we need to relook at how the system and how policing operates and make sure that it's fit for the future and to combat the threats that are coming in the future.
David, just quick fire stuff. Would you say it's not a particularly good idea for cops to take the knee, for cops to dance the Macarena on a Pride march, to drive around in cars emblazoned with Pride flags?
I think that all of this is pretty complex in some ways, and these are slightly different issues. Each of the things that you mention here are slightly different issues. If I take one of them, the policing of public events, and these large-scale public events, I'm thinking about Notting Hill Carnival, for example, at the weekend, hugely challenging, massive policing operations that are hugely challenging. And we cannot underestimate how difficult it is for police officers and police leaders on the ground to navigate. How do you keep people safe on the ground? How do you engage with the public in an effective way? How do you demonstrate impartiality? How do you make sure that with social media and iPhones videoing everything that's going on, how do you make sure that you maintain the wider public confidence in policing? And what we're saying is that's hugely challenging to ask police officers to do. And the current guidelines and guidance around it should be re-looked at to make sure that police officers on the ground are getting the support and the guidance they need to make the right decisions.
David, while we've got you, can I just explore a particular hobby horse of mine? Because I think it speaks to some of the problems that you're addressing. And it really struck me with force, I think, with the case of Shannon Matthews. Remember the Shannon Matthews case? And the Detective Chief Constable investigating that for West Yorkshire Police at the end of the trial came to the steps of Leeds Crown Court and described the perpetrator as truly evil, and how he'd never seen anything like it in the course of his however many decades-long career. And I thought, there is the problem, that police officers now want to insert themselves into the melodrama of crime. Whereas they should be dispassionate, they shouldn't be ostentatiously emoting. There should be no discussion about how I feel, my experience. It's about the perpetrator, the victim, and justice.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the
you're familiar with the genre, David, aren't you?
The account. I remember the case. I don't remember the details that you're talking about. Certainly, in terms of what you're saying and thinking about justice and impartiality and not necessarily over-emoting, I think that's true, but I think that's exactly what the vast majority of police officers are doing, and what they're focused on day in, day out is exactly what you're talking about, is catching criminals, protecting the public, and bringing people to justice and putting them before the courts to do that. I think that's exactly what most police officers are and want to do.
David Spencer, fascinating report, and let's hope elements of it are picked up by policymakers. Thanks very much indeed. David Spencer from Policy Exchange there.